Sometimes it's hard to keep a good thing going, and you come to realize that, eventually, all good things must come to an end. I'm talking about video game developers, of course. What did you think I was talking about? There's a whole lot that goes into video game development that we don't know about, and unless you're a AAA studio making a ridiculous amount of profit, it's difficult to find sustained success in the gaming sphere. Sure, small indie teams are finding success lately, but there have been plenty of big-name studios that didn't make it and have disappeared from gaming altogether. Midway Games was a major player in gaming pretty much since their inception, so you can only imagine how the gaming world reacted when they ceased operations in 2010. It was a shocking announcement. It was as if Namco, Capcom, or Konami shut down. Yeah, that's how big Midway Games were. Believe it or not, Midway has been around since 1958. That's right, 58. And they've given us some hits through the years. While they're mostly seen as a video game developer, they've also published many games as well. The best games Midway has developed include Mortal Kombat, Rampage, Paperboy, Cruisin' USA, Gauntlet, and who can forget, NBA Jam. Seriously, NBA Jam is the game that got me into basketball, and for that, I'm forever grateful. Of course, there are plenty of other games Midway developed, but I'd be here for hours if I had to name them all. Most of you have probably never even heard of Origin Systems, which is fair considering they're not the most popular video game developer, but their team was full of legends. For starters, they were founded by Richard Lord British Garriott, who created the Ultima series, one of the most significant computer games in history. In its 21-year history, its staff included the likes of John Romero, the main designer and developer of Doom, Warren Spector, the director and producer of Deus Ex, and Tom Chilton, one of the designers of World of Warcraft. As you can see, the star power at Origin Systems was insane. It was like a video game super team. As well as the Ultima franchise and the groundbreaking game Ultima Online, Origin Systems also developed the legendary Wing Commander series. Between the years 1983 and 2004, they were one of the best developers out there. If you love real-time strategy games, better known as RTS games, then you were absolutely gutted by the loss of Ensemble Studios in 2009. For 14 years, they made so many incredible RTS games, such as the Age of Empires series and the Halo spin-off Halo Wars. I spent way too much time playing Age of Empires, and I actually still play it to this day. Sadly, Halo Wars was the company's last game. Despite being critically acclaimed and selling very well, it seemed like a sure bet that we'd eventually get a sequel, but Ensemble Studios decided to shut things down for good while still having as many as 6 games in development. One of those games was Titan, which was supposedly a Halo-based MMO game. I feel like it would have been a smashing success. If Ensemble was still here today, the Halo series might be even more popular than it already is. A fitting name for the times we're living in, Pandemic Studios also closed down in 2009, which was a very bad year for multiple development studios. Pandemic was formed by video game industry veterans who were responsible for games such as Battlezone and Dark Reign. The studio was focused on making sequels to existing franchises before releasing their own original IPs. Their first IP was Full Spectrum Warrior, a military game where you were in charge of 2 fire teams. Pandemic decided to venture outside of the RTS and RTT genres and into the open-world action genre with Destroy All Humans. Eventually, they would end up developing critically acclaimed titles, such as the original 2004 Star Wars Battlefront and Mercenaries Playground of Destruction. Sadly, Pandemic was eventually bought out by EA in 2008 and closed down for good a year later. Westwood Studios is one of the older video game developers considering it was founded in 1985. If you don't know any of the games they developed, I've got 3 words for you: Command and Conquer. CNC may be one of the best RTS series ever created, full stop. Oh, but Westwood didn't just stop there. They also developed the Eye of the Beholder games, as well as Dune 2 and 1997's Blade Runner. They've developed even more games before shutting down in 2003, but those are their most successful ones. Along with Blizzard and Ensemble Studios, I would say Westwood is one of the pioneers of the whole strategy genre, so it was a real shame to see them go after just a couple of bad financial years. If only they were able to weather the storm, but that's the way things go in the business world. Bizarre Creations has to be one of the funniest names for a video game developer, but this company meant business. Their first hit was the game Geometry Wars, but the studio was best known for the racing games they released between 1988 and 2011, including the Project Gotham franchise and the combat racing title Blur. It's a shame that Activision had to swoop in and ruin everything. They bought Bizarre Creations in 2007, and just 4 years later, in 2011, Bizarre Creations would close down for good. It's frustrating when AAA developers buy out smaller studios and quickly shut them down, just so they could use the talented employees for their own projects. But again, it's just how things work in the business world. At least they were able to release Blur after getting bought out by Activision, so it wasn't all bad. Sometimes a game franchise is so good that video game companies will milk that cow completely and utterly dry. See what I did there? Anyway, this was exactly the case with Core Design, although it was no fault of their own. You see, Core Design is best known for developing the Tomb Raider series. Yep, they're the original designers of Lara Croft. The problem was that the publisher of the Tomb Raider games, Eidos, forced Core Design to make a new Tomb Raider game every year, which gave the developer a bad reputation. Developing and publishing titles was a team game, so when one member of the team is asking for too much, the rest of the team suffers. Core Design did see some early success with Rick Dangerous, Chuck Rock, and the Monty Python game, but their forced reliance on the Tomb Raider series led to their eventual closure in 2010. Black Isle Studios is a pretty badass name for a developer, and their games were equally as badass as their name. After closing in 2003, many of the key employees of Black Isle eventually went on to form Obsidian Entertainment, a company that has done well to carry on the Black Isle legacy. But the original studio is still greatly missed. If you're unsure about what games they developed, Black Isle Studio was responsible for the 2 original Fallout games. You know, the Fallout games before they became open-world first-person shooters. They are definitely worth playing if you never got the chance to. Black Isle also developed Planescape Torment, Icewind Dale, and, oh yeah, Baldur's Gate, one of the best RPG series of all time. Honestly, Baldur's Gate redefined the RPG genre, and it is a series you just have to experience. Neversoft Entertainment. There's a joke to be made there, but I'm not gonna make it. The studio's most popular game franchise was undoubtedly Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, and its many spin-offs. There were a whole lot of them. If you take a look at when the Tony Hawk games started declining, it all started once Neversoft stopped working on them. Imagine if we ever had just a few more solid Pro Skater games. Instead, Neversoft spent their final years working on Guitar Hero games. Say what you want about Guitar Hero, but I had an absolute blast with the series when I was younger, and dreamt of becoming a rock star. Oh, the good old days. But before Guitar Hero and Pro Skater, Neversoft developed Spider-Man for PS1 and even the pre-Red Dead Redemption Western epic Gun. It's a shame they ceased operations in 2014. Visceral is without a doubt one of the most criminally underrated studios of all time. Seriously, their games from the early to mid-2000s were excellent. You had 007 Everything or Nothing and even The Lord of the Rings Return of the King. Both games were critically acclaimed and deservedly so. But it wasn't until 2008 that Visceral Games would be known as a top developer. Dead Space changed everything for them, and ironically, it was their success that ended up becoming their downfall. Dead Space 1 and 2 were hits, but in typical EA fashion, they ruined everything in the 3rd installment. They introduced co-op play, which is great, but those microtransactions weren't, and the change in tone for the series wasn't well received. As a result, Dead Space 3 didn't sell as many copies as expected, and it was all downhill from there for Visceral. They ended up shutting down in 2017. But before you go, I just have one honorable mention to get into, and that's Clover Studios. They're known for their games Viewtiful Joe and Okami, 2 critically acclaimed games that were surprisingly good. It's a shame they had to shut down operations. They were so beautiful.